The sleeper that woke up the streets. 1970 Oldsmobile 442 W30. Now, when people talk about muscle cars, they bring up the usual suspects. But there was one car, one very angry outlier that came from a brand nobody expected to throw punches. That car was the 1970 Oldsmobile 442 W30. See, Oldsmobile had a reputation. Safe, respectable. Cars your dentist drove, or your dad as a dentist. But then someone in the Olds engineering department looked at a drag strip, cracked their knuckles, and decided they were tired of being boring. Enter the W30 package, a factory hot rod buried under badges and brushed chrome. No stripes, no wings, just violence tucked inside luxury. It came armed with a massive 455 cubic inch V8. That's 7.5 litres if you're keeping track, pushing 370 horsepower, and a stump-pulling 500 lb-ft of torque. That's diesel truck torque in 1970, in a car that still had wooden trim and plush seats. 0 to 60, mid 5 seconds, quarter mile, low 13s, and it would do it quietly. You'd never see it coming. Just a blur of chrome and bad intentions. Here's the bit most people don't know. The W30 option wasn't just a sticker and a badge. It included a fiberglass hood with functional scoops, special cylinder heads, a high-flow intake manifold, and an aluminum intake that shaved real weight. And if you were truly mad, you could delete the power steering and power brakes for maximum performance, because clearly driving a missile wasn't enough. You had to wrestle it too. Inside, it was full Oldsmobile, comfortable, quiet, civilized. It had air conditioning, an optional 8-track, and more insulation than a recording studio. But press your right foot down and the whole thing transformed from midlife crisis to mid-track monster. It was the Velvet Hammer. Refined, yes, but capable of rearranging your spine if you looked at it funny. The 1970 Oldsmobile 442 W30 wasn't loud, it wasn't showy, but it was deadly. It came from the part of General Motors that no one expected to raise hell, and yet it built one of the fastest, most well-rounded muscle cars of the entire era. It was the sleeper that woke up the streets and reminded everyone that sometimes the car you least expect is the one that hits the hardest. The original game changer, 1964 Pontiac GTO. Before the 420s and the 450s, before the burnouts and the hood scoops, there was this, the 1964 Pontiac GTO, the original troublemaker, the car that kicked off the party and then handed you the bill. Technically, it shouldn't have existed. Back then, GM had a corporate ban on racing. Big engines were supposed to be reserved for full-size cars, and yet a few rebellious engineers at Pontiac decided to sneak a 389 cubic inch V8 into a lightweight Tempest and call it a trim package. The result? A loophole, a legal grey area, and the beginning of something extraordinary, the muscle car. It wasn't the fastest car on the street, but it was the first one to democratize speed, to sell raw V8 power in a mid-size body that young people could afford, mod, and race without selling a kidney. 389 cubic inches, 325 horsepower, optional tri-power carbs that looked like a carburetor family reunion, 3 2-barrel units feeding the beast with the urgency of a buffet on payday. A 4-speed manual gearbox and a limited slip diff gave you all the tools to misbehave. This wasn't a Sunday cruiser. This was a Friday night drag strip weapon, straight from the showroom floor. Remember, this was 1964. The Beatles were still wearing suits. Dad drove a beige station wagon. America was buttoned up and straight-laced. And then, here comes the GTO, burbling at idle, throwing attitude like a teenager with a stolen credit card. It didn't just sell performance, it sold personality. It told a whole generation, you don't have to follow the rules, you can make them. Within a year, every major automaker scrambled to catch up. Mopar, Ford, AMC, they all rushed to build their own fire-breathing misfits because the GTO proved there was gold in horsepower and rebellion. The 1964 GTO wasn't just a car, it was a movement, a shot of adrenaline to the chest of mid-century America. It didn't have to be the fastest because it was the first, and first in muscle cars means everything. Nah, it took a boring commuter and turned it into a cultural icon, a rebel wrapped in. Absolutely. Here's your Top Gear style finale to cap off your epic mini doc on muscle cars. This chapter brings the thunder into the modern era with the Dodge Challenger SRT8, Hellcat, and Demon, tying everything together with power, legacy, and unapologetic American lunacy, all wrapped in a touch of sarcasm and reverence. The modern monster, 2008 plus Dodge Challenger SRT8/Hellcat/Demon. And now, we arrive at the end, or perhaps the beginning of the next chapter, because while most muscle cars went soft, got civilized, or disappeared altogether, one name came roaring back from the dead. The Dodge Challenger, resurrected in 2008, and it didn't return as a shadow of its former self. No, it came back angrier. It started with the SRT8, a 6.1-litre Hemi rear-wheel drive, and styling that looked like the 1970s never ended, just with more airbags. It was heavy. It was loud. It was old-school muscle in a new-school suit, a throwback, with traction control. But then, in 2015, Dodge lost its mind completely. Out came the Hellcat, 707 horsepower, supercharged, straight from the factory. You didn't need to tune it. You didn't need to build it. Dodge said, "Here, we did the lunacy for you." It was faster than most supercars. It could destroy tires in 3 states simultaneously. And it had a red key. Yes, a separate key that unlocked all 707 horses, because apparently you need permission to unleash hell. But even that wasn't enough. Dodge, in a fit of corporate insanity, built the Demon, 840 horsepower, street legal, factory equipped with drag radials, a trans brake, line lock. It could do 0 to 60 in 2.3 seconds, which made it the fastest production car in the quarter mile at the time. So fast, in fact, that some drag racing associations banned it, because nothing says "job well done" like being kicked out of a race for being too fast. And here's the kicker. It had Bluetooth, and heated seats, and a touchscreen infotainment system. You could order one with leather upholstery and subwoofers. This was vintage brutality with modern convenience. It was the spiritual successor to every burnout blasting, tire shredding, fuel guzzling monster of the past, only now it came with launch control and satellite radio. The Dodge Challenger didn't just bring muscle cars back, it brought them back bigger, louder, and completely unhinged. It wasn't about lap times. It wasn't about Nürburgring records. It was about fun and fear. Yours mostly. If modern muscle has a king, the Challenger Hellcat and Demon don't just wear the crown, they lit it on fire and used it to roast their rear tires. And there you have it. 10 monsters, 10 moments in time, and one unbreakable truth. America didn't just build cars, it built icons. From the GTO that started it all, to the Demon that scared the rulebooks, the muscle car story is one of rebellion, thunder, and horsepower in its purest, loudest form. These weren't just machines. They were personalities, statements, pieces of culture on 4 wheels. Some were banned, some were forgotten, some are now worth more than your house, but all of them are legends. So if you ever find yourself at a red light next to something low, wide, and rumbling like a brewing thunderstorm, remember, you're not just next to a car, you're next to history. Thanks for watching, and long live the muscle car. So there it is. 10 muscle cars that defined decades, torched tires, and stole hearts. But here's the question. Which one would you choose to rule the streets? The classic brute? The rebellious outlaw? The modern monster? Drop a comment below. What's your all-time favorite? And hey, would you LS swap any of them? Or is that sacrilege? True Blue Talk aims to entertain and deliver, so like and subscribe. Let's go.